Christopher. Welcome to another week in advance. How are you doing tonight?
Oh, really good. Although it's very cold and snowy here in the Midwest, so kind of envy you guys on the West Coast because we've got mountains of snow in Chicago and Wisconsin. I imagine is even more snowbound. And oh my God, Minneapolis, it's got to be a real disaster. So we are in the midst of winter, and that's what February is all about.
We're getting a little bit of a rainstorm here. It's been chilly for our standards. It's been in the 60s, so we're joining the festivities, and I think we're in a really weird period astrologically. We've got a Mercury retrograde that has now begun as we step into the weekend, and we're in between a full moon, new moon energy. We just had the quarter square of the moon, and there's so many events that are going to take place here at the beginning of March, and I feel like we're in between the big buildup.
Oh, we absolutely are. And that's what I like about the way the planets interact, the way they move, is that, you get these crunches where you have the intensity of, okay, look at this, do this, go here, whatever. And then we have these other nice spaces where things just kind of separate, they kind of float apart. And it gives you a time where you can actually take that second breath and get back to your center. And I really see this week as starting out with a lot of that kind of relief energy. And of course, Mercury will be going retrograde just as it starts to kiss Neptune in Pisces. And that's very cool because there's going to be some interesting communication coming through, I think, from various sources that you don't normally listen to that will have spiritual overtones that you may get that epiphany from, that aha experience.
Yeah, this is also messages from the other side, messages deep in your soul. Mercury is at its pretty much, they call it at its fall, when it steps into Pisces, because it just doesn't know how to communicate the same. It goes into a Neptune experience, especially as it's on Neptune, which is invisible energy, communicating through emotion, communicating through telepathy, communicating through feeling, and Mercury has to learn to, I think, pay attention to the mystical more and pay attention to the other side. It's not so logical. Sometimes the information, like you say, comes from sources like, sometimes it can make no literal sense, but it can make sense in every other means as far as how it feels, and maybe even in a kind of a mystical or even religious overtone. There was just this big debate in the last 2 days on the internet with Bill Nye, the science guy, and I forgot the man's name, but he's all about creationists and how the Bible is what describes science, and they had a big debate, and I thought there's nothing more Mercury on Neptune ready to go retrograde in Pisces than a debate of science and God and how science should be used correctly. And I think that these are kind of big overtones in our life as we're all trying to understand, I think, so much of where we're going in our life, where are we going. There has to be this connection to our soul we need to reach.
Exactly. And as we start the week off, we have Mercury starting to pull away from Neptune and get ready to exit Pisces after a very brief stay there. And we have the moon moving forward in Gemini. So we've got a little bit of a square going on there, a little bit of tension coming up, the subconscious aspect of the lunar energy, the desire to communicate clearly from the Mercury energy, and then good old Neptune saying, none of this is real, all of this is an illusion, and you are creating that illusion. So I think this is going to be a weekend when a lot of people experience bizarre dreams, experience synchronistic events, where you're thinking about somebody and you stop in at the 7-Eleven and son of a gun, they're standing behind the counter. Things like that. This is a prime kind of energy association for that. And, again, we've got Jupiter down there in Cancer feeding that expansive energy across into the Piscean realm. So it's going to be kind of fun, I think, through the weekend, but maybe a little bit spooky at times too.
Yeah, that Gemini energy does bring the fun, and that spooky energy could be the misunderstanding of how to process everything. Because I think even though the sun's in Aquarius, the moon is going to trine it. And then, of course, we have Mars in Libra. There's this great grand trine, especially on Saturday. I think Saturday might make a little bit more sense as when it comes off that moon square Mercury, that moon square Neptune. That can be a very confusing transit. So I think Friday you really feel the Mercury retrograde. Like, whoa, this is just really off now. But I think that we get to more understanding it on Saturday when this grand trine does happen. And I think that there's this awareness intellectually that starts to come. And I think even though our minds are stuck in a retrograde, I think there's a lot to review in our life. I think there's a lot to look at in our soul, that there's been a lot of adjustments into this new year. You know, we stepped into a new moon in Capricorn. We had a big full moon in Cancer. We had a big new moon in Aquarius. And here we are now with like all this energy that has compounded us into the new year, and destiny and roads to take, and a Venus retrograde rearranging relationships and value systems that, you know what, we've gone through so much of this. It's time for our minds now to catch up and catch back up with our soul and really start to, you know, be clearer inside. And I feel this weekend gives us an opportunity to logically somehow start to get it that we're taking these actions for certain reasons, and that there's a spiritual message behind that that we start to get to understand deeper than we have in a while with this Mercury retrograde.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, one of the things that is continuing to unfold during all this other activity is we've got that Jupiter, Pluto, Venus opposition going on. Again, the activity is going from Cancer, that fourth house, to Capricorn, that 10th house. So there could be some rumblings within your home, within your nest, as we move through this next week, because once again, we're going to have that opportunity and that kind of a growing desire to get rid of old stuff, to do more house cleaning, to take a look in the attic and see what's up there, and perhaps, you know, shove a bunch of stuff into the alley and wait for those gleaners that run up and down the alley with their pickup trucks to pick up all these things that we don't need anymore. So I think there will be a release cycle coming up because of that Jupiterian activity.
Yeah, I think that especially with that Jupiter energy, it's getting ready for its station position. If we just take a look around at all the planets, Mars is slowing down heavily. Not this week, though. It's still got a couple more degrees to go. But Jupiter, you know, is at 11 degrees most of this week. But right as we end this week we're talking about, Jupiter starts to slip into that 10th degree where it will sit for about 2 months, where it will do its position of getting into the direct motion. And then we have Saturn, which it's on its last degree, because middle of this week Saturn comes to 23 degrees where it will sit for the next couple months. And then we've got Pluto, which pretty much only has another couple months here of moving forward, and it will stop. So, you know, and now we've got a Mercury retrograde. The universe is really, I think, starting to freeze a lot of our lives and to starting to see this magical, you know, position we got to stick ourselves in. And that's the way the universe works. I feel if you really carve out the astrology over the whole periods of your life, you'll notice that the universe does a lot of shifting, but then it does bring us into these periods that feel like time capsules. And I believe that we're starting to become aware this week of what the time capsule that we're going to step into will be.
Yeah, it absolutely is going to start becoming very apparent. And by the end of the week, as we're getting up toward good old Valentine's Day, which is also great fun, we will be having the moon go full in Leo, opposing the sun at about 25 degrees Aquarius. And that's going to fire off one of my favorite interactions. We've got Saturn there in Scorpio. And I also love watching the activity between Leo and Scorpio. I also see them as very much magnetized toward each other. And I know a lot of Leos who have married Scorpios. I know a lot of Scorpios who were involved or married Leos. And so I think we're going to see for Valentine's Day, a somewhat unusual kind of a little bit of stress going on there. And again, that full moon brings all these emotions up that we're not normally addressing. So it's going to lead into a weekend next weekend that's going to be quite fascinating and very dynamic. But the build up to that, we've got Mercury taking that step back into Aquarius right before that full moon, and with as we see all of these elements unfold, we're really going to see a lot of relationship stuff come to a new level of finality, where the final decision is made. I love you, stay with me, I want to spend my life with you, or you're a flat tire in my life, get the hell away from me. It's going to be very dramatic for Valentine's Day weekend.
Yeah, I think it gets even more dramatic because before the full moon, midweek, we have the Sun square Saturn. And when you look at typical astrology with this, Saturn has a lot to tell the Sun when there's a square. I think that this has to face responsibility. This also can face some big decisions in our life. This also is the truth. I feel that Saturn in Scorpio is dealing with raw truth. It's dealing with really deep exposing of certain issues in our life. And as the Sun in Aquarius that wants to be free and rebellious and take off and connect all over the universe, runs into, the teacher on the playground. And this week, for some people, I think this can hit you right smack on top of the head if you haven't been staying responsible on your path, or if you've been, not really facing. This is where you got to face the music. And so I'd be prepared this week that even though this has been a Mercury retrograde, that we're starting to come into the week excited. It is a Sun square Saturn right at the beginning of this week, so watch your depressive energy. It is interesting to see that the moon and Jupiter will be conjunct during this transit, which happens on the 10th. So I think that there is a big lesson or a gift from the universe of opening up our emotions and opening up our feelings. But it really is on how we do face the music, or maybe it's time to make some big decisions in our life. And by the time we get to the end of this week, there's this big exciting full moon in Leo, which is perfectly aspected with Mars. Mars is going to be trining the Sun and also sextiling the moon. So there's going to be a big umph coming at the end of this week. The interesting part, though, is Saturn will still be involved in that Sun and full moon. And I think that the card to play this week is straightening things out and really getting to the bottom of your truth in your life and starting to make decisions of what's the best deep inside of you,
Mm-hmm. Well, and another aspect that I know you're always fond of looking at, one of the first things you go for in a chart is the nodes, and we're watching the nodes finish up these final couple of weeks in Scorpio and Taurus. And I think it's going to be kind of interesting to see how things once again do shift as we're going into that final degree and a half, which will be up to, I believe, by the end of the week or into the following week. And we're really going to get the concentrated final juice from the passage of the nodes through Taurus and Scorpio as it moves into much lighter vibration, moves into Aries and Libra. So what do you think is going to be happening with that nodal activity as we proceed toward that full moon weekend?
Well, I think it's nice that they're in such harmony with the nodes. If we look around, the nodes are in a nice harmony with Mercury retrograde, in a nice harmony with Neptune, and actually the Sun and the Moon will be coming up to a nice position. I think that this nodal activity is about the finalization in our lives of making big changes, big transformation, and that South Node in Taurus is wanting to let go of old value systems, things that we've been holding on to. Scorpio is where you release yourself, you accept in the new, you transform, you rise from the ashes. And I think that this is periods of us kind of releasing a lot of our past. I think that this is about past energy kind of finally being cut off that might have been taking a long time. In relationships that might have taken a long time to finally see the truth in, you're starting to see the truth. In jobs, projects, even in yourself, you're starting to see the reflection of who you really are and what you really can be. And I think that this is one of those weeks that I bring up a time capsule, because I think that we really start to plug in our what's the in our DeLorean of exactly where we want to go, who we really are, what we really want to see. And I think we're getting to so close to that, especially a full moon in Aquarius Leo. Those are two signs that pretty much know what they want more than most of the other ones.
Well, that's definitely true. And Leo, of course, is filled with passion, while the sun will be visiting that region where the Ice Queen reigneth. So, I always get a kick out of how remote Aquarians can be, that completely in disconnect from their emotional range. And at the same time, how Leos are frequently so filled with emotion that they will change the emotions of everybody else in the room simply by their presence. They don't have to say anything, they don't have to do anything. They just walk into a room and everybody goes, oh, I never noticed that. I'm feeling this way now. So, yeah, there is an intensity that we will be watching. The other thing that I wanted to mention briefly before we look at the cards is a little bit of an enigma. I'll put this out there for our listeners, our viewers, because from my perspective, I have always seen astrology as being a science that tells me what I am creating in my own future. In other words, I don't do things because the planets are in specific positions. I actually, by doing things, cause the planets to appear in those positions. And I think we as a collective forget that we are the ones who have orchestrated all this. We are the ones who have created the planetary movement. And our deeper motivational intention is to go through all of these different dramas and adventures and all these different aspects of creation. So I would be interested in our viewers giving us some feedback as to how they feel about that. Do you think that you are affected by the planets, or do you think that you are affected by the planets? Something to think about.
That even's got me thinking there, Christopher. I think that that's a beautiful way of looking at it. And I think it's so funny that you bring this up, because at the beginning I brought up this whole Bill Nye debate. You can look it up online. It's actually very popular right now, and it's a very popular subject of like, where are we at as we are shifting our conscious levels? And especially religions are kind of brought up. This is Pisces energy. This is the age of Pisces that has been ending. We are stepping into this Aquarian new age, and we're actually in that energy now, as we're going to see Mercury go from Pisces back into Aquarius, then back into Pisces. I think we're dealing with, on a grander scale, how do we look at the world? How do we look at spirituality? How do we look at religion? How do we look at all these things? Because I think that we're going to have to start making not hardcore decisions, but I think that there needs to be maybe a more general consensus of understanding of a humanitarian style of looking at the world, opposed to a separation between everybody's views. That we're not going to agree on everything, but I think that we can all agree on an openness, and I think that is what is starting to come into our existence as human beings in our life, and it's a necessity for us to actually save our world. We think that how many beer can koozies we save out of the ocean, or plastic bags that we save from not selling them anymore, is going to save the world. But really, like you say, it is in how we're manifesting things. And I think it's deeper on our conscious level of us all as a collective starting to be more understanding in a more general consensus of what is going on here, what conscious levels are happening, instead of such a bias, one kind of way only works.
Oh, yes. If you skip over from ages, from the age of Aquarius, you skip Pisces, you have the age of Aries. And Aries is all about the ego. and the self. And look at where the whole thing is headed. It's headed into Aquarius, which is about the collective. It's about us. So it is going to be an interesting era, and we're going to start feeling more and more how these things are impacting us. And we're going to realize more and more that we're the ones who are determining what is happening out there. If you're believing that we're doomed, then you're on that side over there that's contributing to our self-destruction. But if you are on the side over here of we can make this thing work, we can make it better, we can optimize the existence, then you're propelling the universe forward in the direction that it naturally seeks to go, that it naturally seeks to evolve in. So let's see what the cards have to say. And we start this weekend. Oh, nice. A nice weekend adventure here. We've got the Four of Rods. So even though it's a week away from Valentine's Day, I think there is going to be kind of an energy of courtship and of acceptance and familiarity. People are going to be wanting to get to know each other better. People are going to be feeling that lighter energy that Aquarius is really starting to percolate with, is really starting to bubble with. As we move through the weekend, we're going to see that that action of the beginning of that separation, Venus from Capricorn. We've got the Knight of Pentacles. So we're going to be doing a lot of review around where our values are placed and what we want to ascribe to and succeed with over this next passage of Venus through Aquarius and then into Pisces. So definitely a very visionary kind of weekend. A lot of people will be kind of dreaming about where do I want to go, what am I going to do when I get there. Then as we progress into this next week, I think a lot of people have been feeling that frustration of things being on a holding pattern. Interestingly enough, with Mercury going retrograde, it's actually going to have the effect of bringing things up to completion. The Seven of Coins is all about fruition. The grapes have come to harvest on the vine. So all of the efforts that you've been putting into life, you may see the success cycle kick in with this Mercury pulling away from Pisces, moving back into Aquarius, and solidify all the things that you've been working on. Toward the mid part and end of the week, well, look at that. That's that activity of the moon advancing into Leo and all those lovers out there with their Valentine's cards. The Ace of Cups, your cup runneth over, and a lot of emotion coming up that you normally don't find during Aquarius time. It's just during that full moon in Aquarius when we have that emotional range really come to the surface. And we end the week with a feeling of success and accomplishment. So we're not going to find a lot of resistant energies this week. We're going to discover that doors are opening, we're able to start advancing again. Some of the dreams we've had for a long time are finally coming to that point of fulfillment. So overall, a very good, harmonious week, I do believe.
I do believe so too. I think the cards registered that perfectly, especially as we see all this really positive energy. That last card you pulled's like my favorite card. That's the celebration card, and I feel even the first card you picked it's a marriage style card. It's just a really positive feeling that I think it is the midweek where we might need to take things a little seriously as the sun does square Saturn at the beginning of this week, but that is that Knight of Pentacles. Take the slower road. There's been a lot of good things happening, but pay attention to what you're manifesting here. Pay attention to what the universe is doing because there's reason, because it's building something great, because there's a big celebration at the end of this week. This is a full moon in Leo, and as somebody who calls himself the Leo King, there's nothing greater than a full moon in Leo. I'm telling you, it's a wonderful feeling.
Well, and I have in my progress chart Leo ascendant, and Leos populate a big part of my life. So I'm always enjoying the magic that Leos bring into this world, and kind of, they share it with great enthusiasm. And I think we'll see a lot of Aquarian personality types come up with some really uh, deep and penetrating observations. And I think that if you have a friend who has a strong Aquarian vibration, pay attention to them midweek, because they're going to come through with some profound insights for you. But overall, it looks like a pretty magnificent week in a lot of ways, even though it may not have a lot of fireworks going off. It's just everything's finally moving forward, and we're finally feeling like, yes, all the energy I've put into things is paying off.
Yeah, this is a wonderful week. It really is. And I think if you're having a tough week, I would look at your own truth. And if you haven't been paying attention to what the universe has exposed as truth, if you're living in a lie, I'll just be honest, that's Sun square Saturn in Scorpio, as the Aquarian energy wants to connect you with this great electricity and this great insight. And there's so many epiphanies this week with a Mercury retrograde in Pisces going to leave into Aquarius, because we got to remember it leaves Pisces and steps into Aquarius by the end of the week. So this Mercury retrograde is going to change gears real fast, and there's this electric energy that comes back. It's almost like we've dipped in our heads in the water and then we pull it back out and get a big breath again and wake up. And there's a lot to wake up to in our lives, and if it's difficult, I would say it's because you might not be paying attention to everything that's been trying to be uncovered to you.
Exactly. You're in resistance to the things that you have created, for better or for worse, that are the cause of your evolution, the cause of your growth. So even if you have challenges, embrace those challenges and realize that you made yourself address these things for a purpose. There is a higher good that ultimately will come out of all of the things that we may be frustrated with at the moment.
Yes. Well, it's been really exciting, and I'm excited for this week. I think next week is going to be one to pay attention to. It's going to be Mars time. It's going to be the nodes changing, and I'm really excited to see what these last couple weeks of February will bring us. Not to say this one's not great, but I definitely feel that that full moon in Leo is tipping us off into something big.
Yes, and 2 weeks after that, we'll have the Sun-Moon conjunction on the first day of March, so 10 degrees Pisces.
All while it trines Jupiter and Mercury retrograde ends. I mean, that's pretty big. And then that week is Saturn retrograde, Mars retrograde, Jupiter direct. I mean, this is going to be a wild, wild shootout in a good or bad way for some people, I think, at the beginning of the month. But I think it's exciting. So.
Yes, and it's all for you. It's all about you. There is nobody else in the line of fire but you. So get out there and dance in the rain and have fun with it.
Well, wonderful, Chris. It was great to see you again, and I will see you next week.
Yes, looking forward to it, Dave. And get out there and have fun, but take a sweater. It sounds like California's getting cool.
Yeah, I definitely got my sweater on, so.
Great.
All right, buddy. I'll talk to you then.
You bet.
Bye.
Bye.